There are many guys out there who don't have God's heart, and they are only thinking for themselves, and you have to stay away from them, and you have to be strong in who you are and know your worth. And you can't let being lonely cause you to make some decisions, because you didn't have a man while you were in prison, so it doesn't mean you need one. So you don't have to compromise. You know that you don't need one. It's just when loneliness comes in, then you feel like you really want one, and that want is so strong till it becomes a fictitious need, and you'll begin to feel that need, and in feeling that need, you will set up some things for yourself that are not good. And that happened in my own life.
One of my major flaws is not seeing my self-worth. I need validation and attention, and I usually seek it from men. I value what they have to say about me over other people in my life that maybe should matter more. Because I was struggling with parole and the restrictions and feeling like an outcast, it took a toll on my self-image and worth, and I lowered my standards. I allowed myself to get involved with someone that I wouldn't have normally chosen. Even though I saw red flags, to me, I convinced myself they were pink. They weren't really red. But I felt seen, made me feel special, and I was longing for that feeling. What he really was looking for was someone to take care of him. And I've always been someone who is happy to take care of others. I want to help. It makes me feel good about myself. So I found myself handing over money or bending over backwards to do things for him that I really didn't have the resources for. So at the end of the day, I was in a relationship that was sucking the life out of me and leaving me empty. At some point it turned, and when I finally stood up for myself, which was really hard for me to do, but when I finally decided to stand up for myself, it actually ended in a standoff. He locked me in a closet for hours and beat me and just really attacked my self-esteem, emotionally and mentally. But I think the point that finally, I think I was even willing to stick it through that because I had such a low view of myself. But the final breaking point was, I will never forget it. I was in a dark closet. I was on the floor crying. I think I had even soiled myself from fear. And he said, "It's your God versus mine." And immediately some of the songs that we sang in prison just came out of my mouth. And I started singing them. And he couldn't come past the door frame. He kept walking into like an invisible wall, and he just kept stopping, and finally he said, "Okay," and walked away, and I never saw him after that. I just know the Lord was protecting me. When people ask, how can you believe in a God, that you can't see? Well, I've seen him. He was there in that room with me. I've seen so many miracles, and that was definitely one. So,
whenever I first came home, I got married because I felt like that was what I should do, considering that I was a new creation in Christ and I didn't want to live in sin. And so I was kind of pressured into marriage by this guy who was my best friend for 7 years that I decided to give a chance to. And he was putting money on my books. He was putting money on my phone. He was coordinating with my family for me. And so I thought, okay, obviously my whole life I've had a bad picker when it comes to choosing men. And this guy had never been, he had never said a wrong word to me. He had never disrespected me. He had always been just in the friend zone. I do feel like I was obligated, I guess, to give him a chance just because of the things that he did for me while I was there and the way he treated me, the things he did for my family. And so I guess that's what pushed me to try to give him a chance and make that relationship work without maybe seeking and waiting on God to see if it was truly what was in his plan and his design for me. And apparently I was wrong, because the day we said I do, everything changed. So it ended up being a toxic, abusive relationship. And so I just feel like, as far as relationships go with men, whenever you come home, you're going to be lonely and you're going to want support, but don't go look for it. It's all in his plan, and it's going to work out in his timing, so it's best to just wait on God and wait on his plan.
As for relationships with the opposite sex, moving forward, I had to really work on my self-love before I can even invite someone in to love me, because if I didn't know how to love me, I could not share with them how to love me. But I did not have full hope when I first started over. I just wanted to be me and Jesus. But God told me that he would bless me with someone, but it took a while to get there. And in the process of doing that, God really showed me that he loved me, and he loved me through George. Meeting George was different because I met him while doing something else. And so the encounter was one of those things that you knew it had to be God who set it up for it to happen. So I will encourage women that are struggling, believing that there may not be hope for you in a relationship. You really have to trust God, seek him, and he will show you, and he'll set you into the right situation. I kind of see it like a Ruth story. I was just kind of out taking care of my business and gleaming to take care of my responsibility, and George just noticed me and decided to take me right on in under his arm like Boaz did Ruth. And so I'm thankful that God, allowed it to work in my everyday life, because if I'd have just went out seeking it, don't go seeking. I went out just doing what I needed to be doing. I was in that place where I needed to be, and I was noticed doing what I needed to be doing, and God just blessed me for being obedient. It was about being in compliance. I got my house in compliance.
Boundaries really, really come into place, definitely, upon reentry. Because you have to think about it, when you're in prison, those boundaries are automatically set for you. You can't touch, you can't do this, you can't go here. Everything has a healthy distance. So when you're out, you have to yourself keep everything at a healthy distance. So you have to have some level of assertiveness and about yourself, as well as courage. And you have to know who you are, because my friends and everyone, they know where I stand. So everyone has their role, and everyone in my life knows where I stand with God. They know. So when I came out of prison, I had a new normal. So everything fit that new normal. But there was an area in my life that I wasn't so sure of, that I wasn't able to enforce these boundaries because I didn't have the practice. And that was the area with men. I didn't have healthy boundaries in that area. So I would allow myself to be in situations that were not ideal for me. And that's where you really need to put those boundaries. Because the thing about it, in church and everything, we tend to compartmentalize our life. We know how to have discussions when it comes to boundaries with friends. We know how to put the boundaries in place when it comes to coworkers and things like that. But when it comes to a man, we tend to compartmentalize that because we don't feel comfortable talking about that elephant in the room, But we have to talk about that, because this is an area in our life where we can go 100 miles back the opposite way if we do not set boundaries. Because we'll end up being in a relationship that don't have the same values, don't have the same principles, don't have the same mindset that we have, and we compromise. All of those things led me to a place of being with someone that was not my husband, that was not God's will for my life, and there was a child born out of that relationship. My son is 5 years old, and it's crazy because when I got ready to make the announcement, people were like, I said I have an announcement to make. People were like, you're gonna open a church, you're going into full-time ministry, all of this lofty stuff. And here I said, what I said, that I'm pregnant. And there was so much shame that I had to endure. It was such a process of me getting back to level ground. And the reason why I'm being transparent with this, because I want people to know all the emotions that you deal with after the moment, all the stuff that you're gonna have to wrestle with, which proves that it's not worth it. So I have a son now. I love my son. I wouldn't trade him for anything, but I have to think about my son's life. I'm raising him alone. I'm not raising him with the father. Far-reaching consequences that God will work out for his good, but we can make better choices to cause God to not have to work so hard. And it's not saying that we're in a hopeless place or a helpless place, because God is a redeemer. And during this time, I will say that I experienced the love of God like never before. But I want people to know that managing this portion of your life is real.
When I feel like I need a man in my life, I remember who I need and whose I am. I don't, and it's nothing against men. I'm not a man hater. I'm just trying to figure out me. And I need to know who I am before I can ever give of me to somebody else. It's not even an issue. And my mom was like, you need to go on dates. No, ma'am. I'm still looking for me. When that time comes, the Lord will land him right in front of me, and I'll know it's right.
Romantic relationships was not a priority for me when I got out, because again, I talked about your identity being scripted. So how can you share your life with somebody else when you don't know who you are? So it was very important to me not only to gain that relationship with my father, but it was to know who I was. Because to know who I am, I can't bring someone else into my life. And that's where we do as women fall victim and prey to man, because we need a man to provide for us, a man to comfort us, a man to fill those voids in our life. A man cannot complete you, because you should be complete in Christ. So until that relationship with Christ is intact, no other relationship is gonna be right. So take care of that first. And then it's not you with your hunting license. It's when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing. So I tell my sisters all the time, put them hunting license away. He will find you when you're ready. But how can you pray for a godly man when you're not ready? Why would a father give you his best son for you to harm? Do your part and he'll do his. So when you're ready, that man will come. So I'm still working on some things. But what God told me, I am valuable right now. This has been untouched. So I'm practically a virgin now. And so I value that, and it's priceless, and it's gonna be to the one my Father has for me. So it's not like I'm holding out, because I'm not lacking in anything.